Good morning, everyone, and welcome, Douglas Atkin from like tuning in from Florence. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Douglas.
Sebastian, I can't hear you. I can't hear anything.
Okay, you can't hear me? Let me try again. Can you hear me? Nope. Hold on. Yeah, everyone can hear me except Douglas, which is a bit of a pity. Guys. All right, we're just going to fix a few issues. We'll get cracking in a few minutes. Douglas will be back in a few seconds. I guess everyone can hear me. I see this in the chat. Hey, Douglas,
Hello?
can you hear me?
I still can't hear you, Sebastian.
You still can't hear me. Okay. Yeah, well, everyone else can, which is weird. Let me exit and come back again. Okay?
Hello?
Hi again, Douglas, can you hear me? No?
No, I had a little ping as you logged back in, but can't hear you.
Okay. Let me fix this. Okay. You still can't hear me, Douglas, right? Okay. Hey, Douglas. Can you hear me?
Still not working.
Ah,
Maybe you type your questions.
bummer. No. Let me give you.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a few seconds. We'll try to fix this for you. I'll be back in a second. Hey, Douglas, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Nope.
Hi. Nope, still not working.
No, still not.
I have my volume turned up.
Try clicking the cog. Clicking the cog on the top left corner of the player.
Yep, I've got audio and video in the settings clicked to my AirPods.
Cool. Okay. Even the
Just play the
output.
test sound and it's fine.
Brilliant. Okay. Let's try one. Okay, we're gonna try logging out Douglas and logging back in. We'll be back in a second. Please bear with us. We'll fix this. Hey, Douglas. Hi there, Douglas. Can you hear me? Can you hear me fine? Nope. You can't hear me, Douglas, can you? Hi, Douglas. Hey, Douglas, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I still can't hear you.
I can hear you fine.
This is I'm in a yeah, incognito window. I'll get out of this though.
Hey, Douglas.
Oops. Now there's two of me. That's weird.
Can you hear me?
Got it. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Still can't hear you.
Ah,
It's insane.
it's insane. Okay, I'll ring you and we'll do it on the phone. And you can. Ouais. We're gonna improvise a solution because we definitely want to hear from Douglas. So I'll try and ring him so he can hear me. For some reason, he's the only one who can't hear me, and we can have a talk because I think everyone can hear him, so that's fine. So just give us a few more seconds, and we'll be right back. Hi, Douglas. Hi, everyone can hear you. So we're gonna play it like this and improvise. We were on the platform chatting just before the show started, so I don't know what happened there. But can everyone hear us on the show? Can you put something in the chat to make sure that you can hear us fine? Just check that, and then we can get cracking. Yep. Okay, cool. We're on. Douglas, we're on. Everyone can hear us, so that's fine. Sorry for that. Let's get cracking. So everyone, I'm super excited to welcome Douglas Atkin to the stage. We're going to enter into best-in-class territory. Douglas has been working in the community building industry for probably for almost 20 years, I'd say. Yeah, did I get that right? And he's done some work for Meetup, who everyone knows. He joined Airbnb in the early 2010s, and he joined when the company was just a handful of people and a couple of hundreds hosts. And now The Airbnb is a community of millions of hosts. So really keen to hear about you. Douglas, can you tell us a bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into the topic. Absolutely fine.
But that was another question: how and why? Why were these teenagers so committed? What prompted them to be this way? And I thought, since they were talking in religious terms, why didn't I study best-in-class cult brands? At the time, that was like Apple and Harley. And then I thought, well, why not? Let's stop there. Why not go to the original? Why not interview members of cults and cult-like organizations to see if I can deconstruct what made people so committed to the most extreme form of commitment I could think of, and most extreme form of community. So that's what I did over the next few years: is interview hundreds and hundreds of members of full-on cults, religions, cults that were becoming religions, like the Mormons, sports team fans, Trekkies, sororities, Marines, all the way down to members of cult brands like Harley. And then that became, I didn't intend to write a book, but it became a book called The Culting of Brands, which was published in 2004. So it was published before there were any social networks. No one was talking about community at all at this point, certainly in the business world. So I was a bit of a lone voice in the wilderness saying community is the next big thing in business. However, luckily for me, and I had no idea, of course, is that some of the people, some of the founders of those social networks read the book and they got in touch. And particularly the two founders of Flickr got in touch and recommended the book, and then ultimately me to founder of Meetup, Scott Heiferman. And to cut a long story short, I ended up joining him as his partner, and we ran Meetup for a couple of years together, which was great for me because I went from being from immersing myself in extreme forms of belonging and belief, like cults, through to everyday forms of belonging and belief that everyday people are making, about anything. There were meetups about pugs, there were meetups about vampires, there were meetups about anything you can think of. So that was good. Then after that, I became really interested in how another form of community, movements. How do you mobilize millions to take action at the same time on a single leverageable point, like a CEO or a parliament or a prime minister or a president? And I met someone while I was at Meetup who'd done it before, and we started a company called Purpose, which is still going very strong. It advises organizations, mostly non-profits, some brands, on how to do exactly what I just said, mobilize millions to take action. And then from that, I ended up at Airbnb and joined in 2012, actually, not 2010.
Okay.
And so, I mean, my title was, we just made up a title, really. My title was Global Head of Community, because the reason is because, as I'm sure you know, Sebastian, if you do a startup, you do everything, right? There are no roles, really. There are no departments. Everyone's, the founders, I was working for Brian Chesky, who's co-founder with his two friends and CEO right now. He was my boss, and Joe Gebbia, his founder, was also my boss for some things. Anyway, they were in every meeting. We were just running like crazy, because at the time we were growing 200 to 300% a year. That means 2 to 3 times as many users, bookings, people, everything, revenue every year, which is it's called hypergrowth, basically. The man who invented the term was the guy who invented the browser I'm using, or the browsers, in fact, and he was an investor. So anyway, That's where I ended up. I did lots of things there. Helped develop the purpose of Airbnb, which I got from the community by talking to them and extracting from them their experience. And the purpose is one that's used very much by Airbnb for every decision they make, every major decision. And the purpose is Airbnb is there to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. So belong anywhere, it's shortened to. And that really does guide everything we do, especially that plus our 4 core values guide every single decision.
Cool.
Really, I mean, to the point of not missing out on revenue, missing out on growth. We'll still follow the mission and the values instead. All right, that's a bit of a mental vomit. Sorry about that. It's a bit long.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And as we prep this talk, you mentioned a really good story around Brian and Joe flying to New York, where you had a handful of hosts that they would interview and then collect feedback from the early days of the platform, and then send them back to San Francisco so that the tech team could code overnight. Tell us a bit more about the very early days.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an example of how engaging with your community, especially in the early days, directly works, all right, because it's small scale. So at the time, there were like 30 or 40 hosts in New York, which was our biggest market. And this is when Brian, Joe, and Nate were in Y Combinator, which is
yeah,
I'm sure you know what it is.
Everyone knows YC.
Anyway,
yeah.
Good. Okay. So then, so they were advised by Paul Graham, who was one of the founders of that, to go where their customers are, which at the time was mostly New York. So every weekend, Brian and Joe would fly out. They would rent a camera because they were too poor to have a really good one on their own, because they knew that when they visited hosts, they took the opportunity to take good pictures, because better pictures led to more bookings. And then they had meetups basically with hosts on Saturday. And then anything they heard from the hosts that they needed on the site, they would call to Nate, the third founder, who was back in San Francisco. He would code it all into the product overnight, and then they would use it and show it to the same host again the following morning on Sunday before they flew back to San Francisco and see if it was working right and so on. So they were the first. Well, I mean, Brian and Joe were the very first hosts, Airbnb hosts. It's called Airbnb, by the way, because Joe pulled out some airbeds that they had in their joint flat because they couldn't pay the rent, and they put up people on the airbeds so that they could end up paying the rent, which is actually the story of so many hosts, especially when we first started.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. You and I, Sebastian and I had a conversation the other day about this. So what I was saying is the community manager model, they were the first community managers as well, being the first hosts, works well at small scale. It works less well at when you get to massive scale. So by about, really 2013, 2014, we were growing so fast. We had so many cities, and we had a great network of amazing community managers in places like Paris, Berlin, Moscow, London, New York, San Francisco, LA, all these places, Beijing, all over the world, Tokyo. But the problem was that the community managers, you can really manage about what's called the Dunbar number. Do you know the Dunbar number? About 100, 120 people, you can remember their first names. Beyond that, it to me, the community manager model does not scale. So one of the things that we did in order to do 2 things here was to have the intimacy of a really good one-on-one strong community, a meetup basically where you're face-to-face, to retain that intimacy but scale it.
Yeah.
We adopted a different model, something that I learned about in that first year through another method, which is grassroots mobilization, which is using grassroots techniques, really pioneered by the Obama campaign. Actually used it in 2004, 2008, 2012 rather. So I hired a lot of those people to help use that model. And the reason that model works and the way it scales is that the grassroots activists, they're the ones who are identifying and training your users, the hosts in our case, to become the community managers themselves. They're trying to make themselves redundant. They don't want to be the community manager. They're passing that role to one of the users or many of the users. And that's how it scales. Because then if you train 10 hosts or 11, like we did, for example, in San Francisco, to match the 11 districts in San Francisco that were politically organized that way, then you end up with 11 community managers rather than just one in that city. And by the way, they're free. We never paid them. We didn't reward them in any way apart from training them and giving the opportunity to perform.
That's brilliant.
So that system, we originally developed the system because we've grown to the point in 2012, 2013 where the hotels had stopped laughing at us and dismissing us as something for students or like couch surfing and starting to take us seriously. And one of the ways they took us seriously was to basically try and shut us down using their lobbying relationships and their lobbying power that they've had for decades all over the world. We had none. We had none of that. We had one lobbyist for the whole world and one lawyer for the whole world, actually. So, but we didn't have lobbying power, money power, but we did have people power. And so what was basically presented to me was how do we utilize and mobilize and use this people power. We need to become legal because the local authorities, with the incumbents, with the hotel lobbies' help and often suggestion, we're trying to make hosts illegal and shut them down. And so that's what we did. I mean, basically, another lesson of this story is you can scale the intimacy of meetup groups is one lesson. The second lesson is growth is not the only goal of community, in my mind. By any means, actually. There's many, many, many goals. It's actually a far more a loyalty creator than a growth creator, in my mind. And secondly, you can use it for all kinds of things like we did. And let me give you a specific example. First example, actually. We had an almighty fight with the Attorney General of New York back in 2013. So he had issued a subpoena to us to give him all of our hosts' information in New York, which is about, at the time, 15,000 hosts. We did not want to do this because we knew that would be like a betrayal to our hosts by us if we did that. Our hosts deliver on most of our service anyway, right? So we're dependent on them, they're dependent on us, it's a true partnership. So handing over their information, which was a really scary prospect to hosts, because one host about 6 months previously had been prosecuted and fined $30,000, which we eventually took to court and got that money back for him. It was a wrongful prosecution. However, that meant the host felt that this was a witch hunt. And so we were going to say no to the Attorney General of New York. Now, as he said to us, no one says no to the Attorney General of New York, right? I mean, no company has ever said no to, and here we were, this unknown little company from California, saying to the Attorney General, we're going to take you to court, we're not going to comply with your subpoena. And the reason we had confidence to do that, and it was a very sweaty existentialist decision, because at the time, New York was about 50% of our business, it's our biggest market. So he could have shut us down. Shut all of our hosts down if you wanted to.
And this would have been the end of it. Yep.
It was the end of it. Yeah, it was. We were just starting to get going, just starting to get name awareness. But yes, it would have killed us off. So this was a really tough decision. But again, we followed our purpose and our values. One of our key values that we follow all the time is be a host. Help, welcome, and nurture other people. Well, we had to be a host to our hosts in this example, and we had to stand by them and feel their pain as much as they were feeling it. So really we were having these very sweaty discussions late at night about what to do, whether we should do this or not, and whether it's going to be the end of AirBnB. And Brian, but I was saying to Brian, we have to stand by our hosts, otherwise they will hate us as much as they hate the Attorney General of New York. And I said, but I think we can do it because I've just done this project before. The startup before about movements. I know how to create movements now. And separately, at the same time, another story, but Brian and I together had started a movement for the sharing economy called Peers. And we had hired already and used for other fights with ride sharers some great battles using these mobilization techniques. So I said, we should do this in New York really, really fast. So I spent basically the next 6 months running effectively a grassroots political campaign to legalize hosts. And so, at one point we had this massive town hall meeting, and the BBC showed up, NPR showed up, Al Jazeera showed up, because this was like a grassroots fight. We had 200 or plus hosts in there. Brian, myself, the one lawyer we had, and the one lobbyist in the room answering questions and mobilizing our hosts into. Well, basically what we were doing is we're telling them we're with you, we're going to fight it in this way. Then we started that process that night, which is like September 2012, to identify which hosts could be leaders amongst us and become their own community managers and community leaders to take the fight to the Attorney General. But the end of the story is that we won, basically. We won the whole media and cultural narrative about hosting in New York. We did take the Attorney General. He asked us, you can't take us. He said, do you have lawyers? Because everyone knows that you shouldn't. No one takes me to court. But we did, and we won. So, so all in all, it was an amazing strategy. And we saw that it was totally exhausting. So that Christmas, which is Christmas 2013, I said to Brian, look, this has worked, but it takes at least 2 months to send grassroots organizers into a city, identify your users, train them as community managers and leaders, help them recruit people, running events and all the rest of it. So we should do it now in those cities which we think are going to be like New York.
And you rolled it out in like over 200 cities, right?
Yes, we started it first in Barcelona, which became a real battle. LA and San Francisco, which also became a real battle. And that also worked really well, and we rolled it out to well over 200 cities. Now, I don't know what it is, but yeah, so in other words, we scaled intimacy, we scaled community management by not being community managers ourselves, but by training and delegating that role to our users.
And you gave me an example of how you were able to leverage local communities like this when the hotel lobby, I think it was back in San Francisco, conveyed a press conference, and like within 2 hours you managed to round up tens, like maybe 100 hosts in San Francisco to show up at the press conference and organize a counter press conference.
Loads of things like that. So yeah. So we had, this is May 2014, I guess. We heard in San Francisco that the hotel lobby had organized a press conference on the steps of Town Hall in San Francisco. So, and it was happening in 2 hours. So because we already had established this fantastic network of 11 host leaders and they had their own teams. You had the press person, the welcomer, the event organizer. Each of these host leaders had their own host role, members who had particular roles. And so we said, hey, whoever can, get to the steps of City Hall. We're going to, not us actually, you, the hosts, are going to hold a press conference beside the ones that the hotel lobbies are doing. And when the hotel lobby one had finished and we started ours, the press stayed longer. They asked more questions. We had about 50, 60 people, hosts there with placards and everything, demonstrating and making the case why hosting is a good thing for San Francisco. We did a very similar thing in Barcelona. In Barcelona, we had 1,200 people show up to a demonstration we organized in Plaça Sant Joan in Barcelona between the Catalan Parliament and the mayor's office. And again, it was the same thing. Please help make us legal. And one of the first time we did it, we got them to present 3,000 postcards, each of whom was signed by a small business person in Barcelona saying that they loved Airbnb hosts, because Airbnb hosts sent guests, clients to them. And so they generated income. So that's like a third rail of politics. Every politician always tries to get small businesses. So we did that. And we only could do that by mobilizing our 19 leaders in Barcelona, plus thousands of the members to go out to the businesses they sent guests to, like, cafes, restaurants, dry cleaning places, all these things, to get these signatures, which they did. And then we presented them to the mayor and said, 3,000 small businesses in Barcelona want Airbnb hosting. You need to legalize it. And it worked.
That's amazing.
Many examples. So.
I love how you were able to, as you said earlier, like balance the intimacy of a movement and the scale of it, and that you never really compromised on any of the two.
No.
And
well, because normally, there are many forms of community, right? I've been dunked like a tea bag into many of them, from cults to movements to meetups to grassroots organizing to company organizations. Anyway, movements. The only way this form of community or movement only works because of scale, right? The fact that you have millions of people telling, we started this movement called All Out, which is fights for queer rights around the world, has done for like 6 or 7 years now. We stopped the Uganda Kill the Gays bill twice. Within 4 days, we presented a petition on the steps of the Ugandan parliament, 1.5 million signatures from around the world saying, do not debate this bill. And but the thing is, so that's scale, and they didn't, and they stopped. And so because they saw the scale and the worldwide, dislike of what they were trying to do. So scale is important for movements. What you don't have in the movement generally is intimacy. You don't have people knowing each other, feeling responsible for each other, giving each other support. That's what you get in a smaller face-to-face group generally, where you can tell you have a strong, intimate community when you see there's a sense of mutual responsibility and amongst the members, and that the members are supporting each other in ways that are often nothing to do with the purpose of the group, like babysitting or helping them change a tire or whatever.
Cool. That's super interesting. We're obviously running a bit behind, but that's fine because we started late. So let's take it for another 5 minutes. And I have questions around how you actually manage to engage really large communities like this. And you wrote a theory about it called the community commitment curve. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I first developed this when I was at Meetup because we had a really bad what I call now the community commitment curve. So what the community commitment curve is, basically it's hard to do this in reverse, but basically when you're starting building a community, you should make low barrier, easy asks of people. So easy to join the community. So at Meetup, we had a very low barrier ask. We asked people to join the online community so that they could meet up face to face. But then what you should do, if you follow the curve correctly, is you make very small, incrementally harder asks, gradually, until the way that works is that you end up getting more people doing the harder asks than if you had simply gone straight to the hard ask, because people feel more committed. Each little ask you make and they feel more committed to
it's more prepared to take a bigger ask.
Yeah, so you get more people to do more things, basically. So generally low barrier asks are online things, like liking a post, posting a post, joining an online community. Harder asks are showing up face to face or running a community yourself. So Meetup had a disastrous commitment curve. We made it a low barrier ask, join the community, and the next ask we made was leave your warm home on a cold night and meet a complete bunch of strangers in a place you've never been to before. So of course we had 60% drop off between joining and showing up, often more. So what we did, then we plotted, and this is basically a tool for product, for the product team. We plotted what asks we would ask people to do, to small incremental asks that would ensure that we got more people to show up. Because the point of meetups was to show up. It was face-to-face meetings. And so we had things like more online stuff than we had before. We had no online stuff, interaction really. Post a photograph, fill in your profile, all the normal stuff. I published it in a blog somewhere called The Glue Project, if you're interested.
The Glue Project, okay.
The Glue Project, yeah, I wrote it years ago, like 10 years ago. Or more, 15 years ago. Anyway, it gives you a sample product map, basically, or at least a map of the asks you should have. So we use a very similar thing again for grassroots organizing, uses the same thing. now, and they actually have a computer in America. Both the Republicans and the Democrats use the grassroots organizer to make the right ask at the right time. In other words, not to go from a low barrier to entry ask to a difficult ask, but graduate it slowly.
Cool. Super interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. Greg, we're getting close to the end of the talk. I had one more question, Douglas. There's a concept that we keep hearing increasingly more and more about, which is community-led growth, and that's something that we strongly believe in. My view is that community-led growth is not a thing for large companies and large unicorns, that any company should start building their community on top of their product or service. What do you think about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes, because the two most obvious reasons why you should create a community of users is growth and loyalty. And the more interactions, or the other concept I should talk to you about, which is something again I learned when I was interviewing. Is you need to rub your members together until they get sticky, which means interaction. The more interactions you have, the stronger the relationships are formed within the community, and the more committed they become. This is true of cults, religions, military units, anything. It's a human nature. So if you end up with a strong community that interacts with each other, not just with you, but with each other a lot, you'll end up with a strong community that's very difficult to break, actually. I mean, you have to do something really bad to piss off your community for them to leave, because they will be then leaving their friends.
Yeah, it's hard to break. It's actually also hard to copy a community. A product is easily copied, but a community can't really be copied. So it's another reason to grow a community on top of your product or service.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, that's the end of it. It's been a real pleasure. Sorry for the hiccup at the beginning, but we got there eventually, which is good. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Douglas, for your time. It's been really interesting. We're talking about people power, how you managed to literally lobby and influence a market with a handful of community managers across the world. It's been really very insightful. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Stay cool in Italy.
Thank you.
And thanks again for everything. I'll call you offline and we can talk more about it. Okay. And bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.